as well. And again, I'd like to encourage the attendees, if you have any questions, please ask them using the control panel, and we try to fit them in. Okay, let's get started. Pim, tell us a little bit what you see here and why you think Agile is important and benefits the project.
Okay, so this picture is basically showing different people or different stakeholders that are involved in a software development process, and it shows how difficult it is to communicate something. Even though the customer explained it in the first picture in a certain way, the programmer wrote the code in a very, very different way, and eventually it turned out that the end user needed a completely different product. Agile is trying to solve this problem, the communication breakdown, by involving all the different stakeholders and keeping them involved throughout the development, by having short iterations and continuous providing feedback by giving demos to the customer. So at any point in time the customer can adjust what is being developed.
So one of the big benefits is just the changes in the process.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And I think it's important for the remainder of the webinar that when we say Agile, we use it broadly, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
So basically, we go for the Agile manifesto, where you have the
Right.
high-level stuff like individuals' interactions over processes and tools, working software over documentation, collaboration over negotiation, and like you said, change over following a plan.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
we know there are several flavors of Agile, and I think a couple slides later you're going to speak a bit more about what you guys are doing in your projects.
Yes.
But for the webinar, we're just going to use Agile as in iterative and incremental development.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Okay. Let's move on. I think we have a poll here, Sabrina.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what is special and what we're doing right is that the Agile teams you're working in are distributed.
Right, so at least the team that I'm working for, the client that I'm working for, has got teams in 3 different countries, which makes it a bit of a challenge, but also has a lot of benefits.
Which we're going to talk about in the remainder. Oh, we're getting some pretty interesting results on the poll. Can you guys see them on screen?
Yeah, at least I can.
Okay. So we talked about the benefits about Agile being able to be flexible and able to change. The reality of many companies is that teams work distributed. And in the poll we asked them some of the biggest hurdles. Can you give us your feedback on the hurdles?
Well, the number one is the location or time zone, 75%. I actually think that this works to the advantage of an Agile team, because you are able to test while the developers are sleeping, and the developers get their feedback the moment they wake up, so you can keep the process very, very quick.
Okay, and the other ones, culture and language?
Well, culture and language are certainly obstacles that can be difficult, but I think as long as both teams commit to working together, as long as both teams realize that these differences exist, it is actually quite easy to deal with them, and they don't become obstacles, but they can become strong points.
Okay, okay. I find it interesting that all of them got quite some votes, right? Except only language is a bit less than the other ones, because we all speak English. Okay, tell me a little bit on your project.
Okay. I work for a client in the Netherlands, and we've got several different projects with this client, and actually they're all in the financial sector. One thing that makes it more difficult is that the specifications are not in English. They're definitely not in Chinese, but they're written in Dutch, which makes it difficult for the testers, of course, to read them. We'll get back to this later, how we solve this problem. The members of the different Scrum teams are located in 3 different countries, 2 time zones, and speak 3 mother tongues. None of the teams have English as their mother tongue. And we work in 6 different Scrumish teams, Scrum-like teams.
And I believe you mentioned that even in the Netherlands, right, the teams are not all located in the same location.
Yeah, we have 2 different offices in the Netherlands, so we also use the same tools that we use to work together remotely are also used by the colleagues in the 2 different offices in the Netherlands itself.
Okay, and yesterday we went over a little bit on how you guys set it up, and we decided to put Scrumish here. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, because Scrum actually requires people to be in the same room physically. One of the strengths is that you can just walk to your colleague and ask him a question instead of trying to figure out a problem by yourself. This is of course not really possible. I cannot walk to the office in the Netherlands and ask one of the developers a question there. But with all the modern communication equipment that we have at our disposal, we are still able to work as if we were sitting in the same room.
Okay, are there other things you don't do from Scrum, or other practices you added from other Agile development or other development methodologies?
Well, we adapt to the situation. I think we were following the Scrum process pretty much as it was meant to be. But when you work remotely, you have to adapt to certain issues that you face. You have to be able to grab certain opportunities, so we adapt to the situation.
Okay, yeah, this is also in line with what I found. That so also people that work on the same locations, they adapt to the situation and
Yep.
implement certain ways from different methodologies.
Right, right.
Okay, interesting this. And 3 countries, right, they're located in?
Right, in Romania, in the Netherlands, and in China, Beijing.
Okay. Tell us a little bit on how you guys work in China, please.
Well, we get to the office at around 9 in the morning. The first thing that people do is they review their own tasks. So it is not me who distributes the tasks among the teams, but it's the team member itself who look on TFS, Team Foundation Survey, tool similar to Jira. I think most of the listeners are familiar with that, to see what they can do in that day and whether they think they're going to face any issues with it. Around 9:30 we have an internal stand-up, which takes about 5 minutes, very, very quick. Everyone will answer 3 questions: what they will do, how much time they think they need to do it, to make sure that they're planning their time efficiently, and whether they need any help from their colleagues.
And you told me the other teams also use these internal stand-ups, right, in their own locations?
Yes, we have a stand-up with the developers in the Netherlands and in Romania in their morning, so that's the afternoon for us.
Okay, so they don't do an internal stand-up, they just have the shared stand-up.
Yeah, they have the shared stand-up, but it's the same principle, right? Because we do it in the morning because it's in the night for them. And
So what's the reason, yeah, sorry, go ahead, why you do it twice?
To make sure that we use our time efficiently during the day, and to make sure that if one of the colleagues in Beijing knows that they're going to face a problem, knows that they're going to face questions, they can immediately get help from their colleagues. Usually we don't solve a question during the stand-up itself because that would take too much time, but rather we take it offline. We very quickly discuss who can help this person, and after the stand-up they figure out an answer to it so that they can get along with their work.
Okay, and then after the internal stand-up?
After the internal stand-up they start their own work. They start to work independently. If they meet any issues, they discuss them together, and otherwise they just continue the work that they committed to do in the morning. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we have got something called a pre-grooming. This is not for everyone. This is once a week for most colleagues here. It's a preparation for the grooming that we would have later in the day. Again, a grooming is only once a week, and it's a meeting with both the developers and the testers and the project consultants in the Netherlands. We use the pre-grooming to make sure that we are prepared for the grooming itself. As I mentioned, specifications are in Dutch, so it's a little bit more tricky for us. So we discuss the new user stories amongst ourselves first, so that we can use the time in the afternoon during the grooming more efficiently when the developers from the Netherlands also attend.
Not to waste their time.
Right, yeah, not to waste our time and to make sure that we can actively participate in the grooming itself, yeah.
Okay.
So around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, colleagues in the Netherlands get to the office. They also start with checking TFS. At that time they already got feedback on their work from the previous day. So we will have finished testing most of it. They know whether there are any new defects. If there are any new defects, they can immediately start fixing them. If there are no new defects, they will continue their development work on other user stories. Between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock, we have the daily stand-ups. Again, this is about 5 minutes per team, so this is not the whole hour, but we have 6 different teams. Daily stand-ups were attended by both the developers in the Netherlands and Romania and the testers in China. We tell our colleagues in the Netherlands what we have done, what we have found, whether we have found any new defects, whether there's anything they need to pay attention to. They tell us what they are going to do that day. And following this stand-up, we continue our testing work, and we usually use tools like Skype or Link to communicate directly with the colleagues in the Netherlands if necessary, to discuss problems that we have found, for example, while they were asleep.
Okay, we're going to go into the communication tools in a bit later.
Yep.
What I find interesting in this setup, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts about it, a lot of companies that are looking for offshore partners, they require the offshore team to work in their time zone. And you guys don't do that. Can you give me your opinion on that? Or on working in the same time zone, or just separating it?
Well, I think it's very important to have some overlap. Because you need to be able to communicate, you need to be able to have that opportunity for the direct communication between the tester and the developer. But I actually think that the fact that in China it's 6 hours earlier than it is in Holland is a very, very big advantage in this case, because it means that we can actually continue the software development cycle almost 24 hours a day. The developer has almost instant feedback on the work that he has done. So it means he doesn't have to wait until the end of the next day, which he would have to do if the tester was located in the same time zone or in the same country.
So you guys keep it agile while having some overlap, while you get the benefits of an extended workday by having part of the team work when the others are, well, either asleep or having dinner.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Okay, interesting. And do you think it's also beneficial for your ability to get better people in your team than people who would work nights? Or
yeah, I think people in China also prefer to work normal hours during the day. So yeah, I think it's beneficial for me. It's easier to find people who want to work normal hours. Yeah.
Yeah. Last time I wanted to stay up night hours was when I was in university.
Yeah. Right.
That's some time ago. Sabrina, I think we have another poll here.
Yes, we do.
Pim, we got a question from, I guess, another Dutch person, Jelle, and he's asking, the internal stand-up, is it 5 minutes per person or total or per team? Could you expand a bit on that?
That's 5 minutes in total. So we have 6 different teams we test for. 6 different Scrum teams, but the internal stand-up is just the whole team here in China, and it's about 10-20 seconds per person. Unless we run into an issue, a problem, then we discuss it for no longer than half a minute. If it takes longer, we take it offline. So it's 5 minutes in total.
Okay, so you try to keep it agile by not getting strained too much by having discussions and meetings.
Yeah, and then the stand-up meeting, as the name already says, is actually you have to stand up, because if people sit down, the meeting tends to get longer. People tend to get a little bit sleepy, maybe. So by standing up, you keep it very quick. You keep the energy in there.
Maybe on your side, 6 hours later, it's morning here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, what do you think of the poll results that we just get in?
Let me have a look. Well, it's not very conclusive, is it?
No, it's like 60% has some issues,
Yeah.
other not.
Yeah. I think remote agile testing can be quite difficult if you don't get commitment from both sides and if you don't realize and identify the obstacles that it brings with it. But once you find a way to handle those obstacles, it really does bring a lot of advantages to both sides, I think.
Okay, before we move on to culture, we got a question from Mike. Mike.
Yeah.
And he's wondering what type of testing you guys are doing, what kind of testing?
We're doing all different kinds of testing. Mostly in a Scrum team you do manual testing because you're testing the new features as they are being developed. At the end of every iteration or at the end of the of when we finish developing and testing one user story, we usually develop a automated test for it, either using SpecFlow or another tool. We'll get back to this later. And we also do load testing and performance testing. It really depends on the project, depends on the requirements of the specific project.
Okay, and unit testing?
Unit testing is done by the developers itself. So we don't do that at the moment in China.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's go to culture, and there was also a question by Vinay. Talk us a bit about the cultural and language difference you experienced in all teams.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that you also see on this slide is English is hard for everyone. In Holland, the native language is Dutch and it's not English, and even though most Dutch people believe that they speak English fluently, in reality it isn't. They don't. So we're working with a team who are all speaking a second language, and it creates a lot of confusion sometimes. But again, the most important thing is to realize that there are differences and to identify them as soon as possible. Cultural differences, one thing that you hear a lot is that Asian people, maybe Chinese people in particular, tend to say yes while they mean no, or they don't do that. I haven't really noticed that a lot here. I think this might also be because of the type of people that we hire. Agile really requires a certain kind of people, people that can work independently, that can be trusted. This is something that we'll get back to later in a later slide, I think.
Yeah, I think we're going to go on it more, and I think another thing we're going to talk about later is maybe it's important to note now everyone communicates with everyone as well, right?
Right. Yeah. You have to have a direct communication line. Yeah.
Okay. How did you guys find out that English is hard for anyone? Do you have some examples on that?
Yeah, I can give you an example. We have a tester here that just started that actually has got a background in English. He studied English for 6 years. He has passed the highest level of English examinations, like TOEFL and IELTS. And when she first listened in on one of the meetings that we had with our clients, it was really, really difficult for her to understand it, both because of the dialect and both because Dutch people might be using a somewhat different grammar structure in their sentences. For me, it's quite easy to understand because I'm used to the Dutch structure as well. But for testers here, it is a big challenge. Yeah.
Okay, and on the Dutch side, do you notice that things that they had a hard time expressing English, or?
Yeah. Sometimes I speak with colleagues in Holland, and they're very glad that they can explain something in Dutch sometimes because it's the language they think and it's the language they communicate in every day, so it's a little bit easier for them. But at the same time, once they get used to the process itself, they kind of grow into it. The first steps are difficult because you have to express the same things in a different language, which means you have to translate it for yourself all the time. But once you do that for a few weeks, it almost becomes natural for you.
Okay, you guys do use tools like Google Translate, right?
Yeah, we use them in China, yeah, for translating the Dutch specifications, but Google Translate is also horrible when translating Dutch to English. So, in addition,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, in addition to Google Translate, we also have Dutch lessons, 3 times a week, half an hour, where we tend to focus on the kind of language that is used in the specification itself, and also on very simple sentences like hello, how are you doing, the weather is nice today, because it's just nice to break the ice when you're speaking with someone in Holland and you can actually say a little bit in Dutch. Actually, I've also taught some Chinese to our colleagues in Holland, and they used it during the stand-up, which was a great success.
Okay, so both sides learn each other's languages, and I guess Dutch is like the language of the application, so you focus on the business part of it, the technical language used in the applications, or the functional language.
Yeah.
And then also both sides will just learn each other's languages for fun, to say hi, or thank you, please.
Just very, very simple things, because it can really break the ice. It can get people closer together, and if someone you work with is actually someone you find friendly, it's much easier to work with, right?
Yes.
It doesn't matter whether you're working in a remote location or whether you're working in the same office. You have to like people to work with them.
Is this what you would gather under commitment of both sides?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things. Another thing that I mean here is that outsourcing might be a management decision, because they see financial benefits, or they see benefits in the business processes, but in the end it are the developers who are working on the software itself and the project consultants who are talking to the client, who are doing the groomings during the Agile process, who have to work with us. So they have to be committed to it as well. And also in my experience in the beginning, this is sometimes it's a little bit difficult, because you have to get used to something new if you've been using a certain structure for a lot of years. And you certainly try to change that. That's always a little bit scary. But also in my experience, I don't know anyone at the client actually who wasn't pleased with the process as soon as they got used to it, because they started seeing the advantages of it.
Okay. Interesting commitment on both sides. On communication, you asked to add this slide. Can you explain a bit what we're seeing here?
Right, because communication sounds like it's just about language, right? As long as two people speak the same language, they can understand each other and they can know exactly what the other person means. But actually there's also 2 other factors involved that might potentially be even more important. The first thing is something called cultural framework of reference, which means that even if I tell you the same thing, you might interpret it in a different way, because you have different experiences in your life, you grew up in a different place, you have different values that you find important. And the last one is confidence, which might not be a very big issue, for example, for people from Europe or people from America, but actually in Asia it's a big issue. Also in China, of course, a lot of the colleagues here, especially when they first start, they find it a little bit scary to speak
Do you
during meetings.
train them, or do you work on gaining confidence? And how do you, if so, how do you do that?
Yeah, of course we train them. I think the first thing is you have to get used to, you have to get comfortable with speaking English. So we often speak English in the team itself, even when there's 2 Chinese people communicating. We review after meetings. We of course compliment as soon as someone has stepped up and stepped over their own fears, let's say, and really started to actively participate in a meeting. The only thing that can really build confidence is when you do something and you do it well and you feel good about yourself, and next time you will try it again, until it becomes natural for you and until you don't even think about it anymore.
Okay, and I guess with you guys it's especially difficult with 3 cultures.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's probably a language and cultural thing, because in Holland we've got our own dialect, and Romania's got their own dialect, China's got their own dialect. We've all got a different cultural background. So misunderstandings happen easily. The best way to avoid this is to confirm what the other side means. So very quickly summarize what the other person said during a meeting, for example, or what we always do after we had a longer meeting, a grooming meeting or a retrospective meeting. We send a summary, in English of course, of what has been discussed and what we agreed upon, so that it's clear for everyone, so that if a misunderstanding arose at some point, we can at least avoid the fact that it will have any impact on the process itself. The last thing that we do is we record all the different meetings and we listen back to them if necessary.
Okay, I think this goes over a question we just got from Vinay on documentation. I assume he means on communications required. So there is some extra documentation on the communication.
Yes, there is some extra documentation on the communication, but it's not like it's taking us a very, very long time to make it, because I think you would always want to take notes during a meeting so that you don't forget what has been said or that you don't forget any details of it. And instead of having everyone take their own notes, we just appoint one person who takes the notes and shares it with the rest.
Okay, we went to the next slide. Can you explain a bit on what we're seeing here?
Yeah, that's a meeting. I think that's a grooming meeting. You see the developers in the Netherlands on the left.
Exactly, because the first thing I want to ask is why is everyone sitting down?
Yeah, because it's not a stand-up, right? Yeah.
I'm kidding.
So grooming meetings tend to last for 1 hour or less. So we time box them. We say we've got 1 hour before the meeting itself. We say, we want to discuss these stories. If we only finish 8 out of the 10 stories, we stop there because we don't want the meeting to take too long. So on the left side you see the developers in the Netherlands accompanied by a information analyst who's explaining the story. In the middle you can see me and Mandy in the Beijing office, and on the right side you see Julia, who was working at home that day but who could still join the entire process because we're working remotely. In the bottom you see TFS. So the Netherlands is sharing their screen with the colleagues in China, and together we look at new user stories that we want to groom. We explain them, we estimate them together, and we make sure that none of us has any questions so that we can start the development on it and we can start the testing on it.
So on all stand-ups, grooming sessions, you guys use visuals, cameras in your communication?
Yeah, we always use videos because it's a lot easier to talk to someone if you are using a video. It makes it a little bit, it's nicer to talk to a face than it is just to talk to a screen, right?
Okay, and then the rest of the communication goes via email, IM, etc.
Yeah, we use email a lot. We use Skype a lot, so instant messaging, and we also use Skype a lot to do video calls. One of the big advantages of instant messaging and video calls is that it's a direct communication between two people. It's not a good thing if a third person like me would be sitting in between a tester and a developer, because it would only make the chance that you get a distortion in the communication, misunderstandings bigger. Of course, if one of my colleagues here in Beijing doesn't really understand what a colleague in Holland is saying, I will help them and I'll help them to clarify it. But ideally, I don't want to be sitting in between. Direct communication is really, really important to the Scrum process.
Okay, we got an interesting question here from Rai, and he says the time difference between India, I assume that's where he's located, and the US is 12 hours.
Yeah.
So what happens then? One team stays up late? That kind of goes into what you earlier mentioned on having some overlap.
Yeah, that makes it a little bit difficult. Actually, we have the same situation in one of the other teams at XBO here. Their client is located in San Francisco, so they almost have no overlap. Unless they get up really, really early in the morning, they have some overlap. What that team is doing, is that some of the testers there, they actually start communicating with the American office when they are still at home. So instead of spending their entire working day at the office, they, for example, spend 1 hour at home to do communication, to do a quick call, to answer some questions, to talk to developers to see what they have done that day. Then they go to the office and then they start to do their work. Same thing, some other colleagues, they chat to their colleagues in the evening when the American colleagues get to work. They tell them what they have done in the day and what issues they ran into. If it is really impossible to create overlap, you can always use email, but I think in Agile it's really, really important that you have got the opportunity to communicate with each other directly. So I think, like we said in the beginning, we are a Scrumish team, which means we adapt to the situation that we're in.
Yeah, one of the attendees suggested we use a flow where we use several countries and time zones to keep it continuous from the US to the Netherlands to India to China to the US.
Yeah. That's also a way. Yeah. Then you really have 24/7 development, right?
Yeah. One question from the audience: do you record your testing as well?
We use Test Manager to record the steps that we take. We'll go back to it in another slide, but I'll explain it very, very quickly. Test Manager can help you with kind of a record and playback function. So a developer can very easily see what we have done and can use this information to duplicate the bug that we found. Also, it provides a lot of diagnostic information on what we have done. If we report a bug and the developer says, well, you know, I cannot reproduce the same bug, we recorded a short video of us reproducing it, and we send it to the developers in the Netherlands. Again, the fact that we can communicate directly helps with this a lot. We don't have to send an email, wait for a long time, and get an answer, but we can just use IM to chat.
Okay, great. The audience says it's a good idea.
Okay,
let's talk.
Glad to hear that.
Let's talk on the next slide. People.
Yeah. At least I think people are the most important part of an Agile process. If you don't have the right people, it's very, very difficult to work together effectively. Of course, you have to have people who have a strong technical background who can actually do the testing work itself, but I think Agile requires a little bit more because of the importance that is placed on communication. English language, of course, is a very important factor, but also what we talked about earlier, cultural sensitivity. You have to be aware that there are differences and you have to find a way to deal with them. This is something that we often talk about in the group itself. We have a brainstorming session, we call it, on Monday morning, about half an hour, in which we discuss what kind of defects we found last week, whether we can share any information with other colleagues from different teams on the kind of testing that we need to pay attention to. And we also discuss any issues that we ran into with communication, any things we don't understand. We help each other to get better at this. Another very, very important thing with a Agile team is that someone can work independently. Like I mentioned on the slide, a day in the life of an Agile tester in China. I don't actually sit in between the tester and the work that has to be done. I don't distribute the work amongst different testers. They have to pick up the task by themselves. All the different tasks are prioritized in TFS, so they pick up the first task that they can, they assign it to themselves and they start working on it, and the moment they're finished they're going to pick up the next one. So they have to be able to work by themselves, they have to be able to motivate themselves, and well, they have to find their own work, and the moment they face a problem they have to either solve it by themselves or find the right person who can help them, and that can either be a person, one of the colleagues in China or one of the colleagues in Holland. Or for example, if there's a language issue, they often come to me because I can help them very, very quickly with the Dutch specifications. The last thing, logic is very, very important in testing. and I really like creativity, which means you've got to find ways to improve the process. Agile is not a fixed process, it's very much a living thing, so we can always do things better. We'll get back to that one in a moment as well in SIT teams.
I'm wondering, or I'm sure there are many QA and test managers in the audience, many of whom also have to hire people in different cultures.
Yeah.
How do you find out this? Do you have any specific questions you ask when you do your recruiting? Or do you have a certain process? Or
well, you know, I usually I do an interview in English unless I think they're really, really good technically, then I might do it in Chinese, but usually I do an interview in English, so that's why you test the language. The language part. For the cultural part, I just give them some scenarios. I just describe what we are doing, and I don't give them the solution to the obstacles that we are facing. And I ask them to analyze it. I ask them to say, well,
could you give us an example?
Situation, yeah, for example, let's say you are in a meeting and you are speaking to a developer in the Netherlands, and he doesn't understand you, and he just skips the question. What do you do? Do you just leave it there, or do you press on during the meeting? Do you contact him later?
But you do this open-ended, right? You don't give them a multiple choice.
I don't give them multiple choice. No, definitely not. No.
So you would play a developer and then say, how do you react, or show me how you do it.
Right. For example, yeah. So you just try to put them in a situation that we face every day, and see what kind of solutions they come up with. And if they come up with very creative, very good solutions, at least solutions that show that they understand that these differences exist and that we have to deal with them somehow, then they might potentially be a good fit. But during an interview, even if you have 2 interviews, typically it doesn't last longer than 2 hours in total. So you only have so much time to really get to know someone, which means that in the first week or the first 2 weeks that someone works here, you really see how they deal with these differences, and that's also the moment when you notice when someone's really fit for the job or isn't. Yeah.
An interesting question. What is more weight in a team, personality or skills?
Oh, that's difficult. I think you can learn skills, and it's very difficult to change a personality. So I would say personality. But you don't only want strong personalities, right? You want to have people with hard technical skills as well, so you need a mix. But if I would have to choose one, it would be personality, because it's much more difficult to change than skills.
Okay, so if you look at the weight of a total team, say, well, I guess it's difficult to say, but 30% skills, 70 personality, or?
Well, you want somebody 40-60 maybe.
40-60.
Yeah.
Okay, that's difficult to say.
That's a very
of course, people with
one.
personality also have skills, right? And the other way
Right,
around.
yeah.
Okay, tell us a little bit about the tools you guys are using.
Yeah, let's start from the top right, because maybe that's the most important one. That's TFS. I talked about it a little bit. TFS is a very similar system to Jira, for example. It's an online cooperation of collaboration tool. So we put all the work that we're doing in here in the form of user stories, and we put tasks under those user stories. And the moment we start working on them, we change the state of it to in progress. The moment we're finished, we change it back. We change it to done. This allows everyone who is involved, so not just the developers and the testers in 2 different countries, but also the testing coordinators, also the information analyst, also the project managers in the Netherlands, even the end client to view the whole process. So it makes it very, very transparent who's working on what and how much we still have to do. TFS also allows us to work independently, or allows every person to work independently, because they can see what has to be done, so they can pick up their own tasks. Let's go to the second one, bottom left corner. This is Test Manager. I talked about it a little bit earlier. On the left it's a little bit small, but on the left you can see a long list of different iterations, different sprints, and under each sprint we've got two categories. We got RFCs, a change in a current product, and we got new products itself, and we put all the test cases that we make in Test Manager. The moment we run a test case, we run it using Test Manager so that the developers have got the diagnostic information, if needed, to reproduce a bug. And Test Manager also allows us to very quickly generate testing reports about what has been tested, how much time we spend on it. It even allows us to generate an overview of which parts of the code has been tested. So Test Manager integrates really, really nicely with Visual Studio, which you see on the top left. Sorry. In Beijing, we use Visual Studio for the automation testing, automated regression testing, and in the Netherlands, they use it to develop the product itself. Visual Studio also integrates with TFS, so that means that we actually share the code that we develop in Beijing in real time with the developers in the Netherlands, so that they can either look at it or adjust it or make modifications to it, whatever they see fit. So the nice things about these three tools is that it really integrates the team. They're not separate tools, but they're all part of one big process. The last thing that is on this slide is an example from SpecFlow. SpecFlow is a Cucumber language, which means it's very, very easy to write a test case in SpecFlow. What you see here is actually a test case in SpecFlow written by an information consultant. He writes his specific testing point in SpecFlow, and we use C# and Selenium to implement this testing point and to run this test automatically, either every day or every week or whenever we see fit. So this allows us to, for the people that have got the deep knowledge of a product, to develop the tests, and allows us to implement them. So you don't need a technical background to develop an automated test using SpecFlow.
Before we move on to the self-improvement teams, can you quickly tell the types of software and systems you guys are working on?
Yeah, you mean like which platforms we're working on, I think, right?
Yeah, well, I think more the types is the question. SAP, ERP.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're working. Two of the projects that we're working with are web-based. They use ASP. They use Ajax. They use JavaScript. Another project is Windows-based, so we use WCF there, I think.
And they're financial applications, right? In a
They're all
regular
financial applications
industry by Dutch government.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have to move up a little bit, but I do want to spend some time here because I think it's important. Tell us a little bit on how you do your self-improvement teams, or what they are.
Yeah, let me start with what they are. Because we test things directly after they're developed. There's no time, there's no waiting time in between them. It means that we sometimes we're very, very busy and we work well over our capacity. And sometimes we have to wait for the developers in the Netherlands to finish the development, that part of the story. So instead of not using this time useful, we started to start self-improvement teams. They're very, very short projects, no longer than 10 hours, typically between 5 and 10 hours. They are done by members of different teams. So, like I said, we have 6 different Scrum teams that work here. We don't use the same teams when we start a self-improvement team.
So they're cross teams, right?
Members they're cross teams, yeah. So actually members from different teams in different countries as well that normally wouldn't work with each other. So we both have local teams that have this in Beijing. We also have distributed teams, so where one member is from China, one's from the Netherlands, one's from Romania. we only have one condition when someone wants to start a self-improvement team, is that it should provide business value to the client or the XBOSoft, which means whatever we're doing, it should be useful. My other condition is actually is that, yeah.
So I guess in the end, business value is determined by users?
Business value is determined by users, yeah. So
Okay.
we for example, we did a lot of POCs, proof of concept, in POC projects. For example, we wanted to start automation for one particular project, and we were not sure if Code UI or Selenium was the best fit for this project. So we did a POC for Code UI, we did a POC for Selenium, and eventually we decided together with the client that Selenium was the best fit, so we started using that. And we've been developing the automation framework for it ever since.
Okay, interesting. I moved us to another slide, and while we're preparing for this webinar, you shared your thoughts on how important automation is in Agile.
Yeah. Agile is all about controlling a process, right? You want to be able to do things as quickly and as efficiently as possible, but you also want to make sure that whatever software you deliver to your clients is working and doesn't contain any regression or doesn't contain any defects that you haven't found. So we, after we have manually tested something, we usually integrate it in a automated regression test. I say usually because we don't do it in every case. We use a risk analysis to determine which parts of the product might have the highest impact, either technical risk or business risk. And those that have the highest impacts, we definitely put in an automatic regression test, and the others we discuss with the client.
Hold on a sec. I think Serena wants to put a poll in here, then we can continue talking.
Okay.
While the poll is getting up, tell us a bit more on how you do this risk analysis, how you determine what to automate and what not.
Well, I think the most important thing in a risk analysis is that you have to involve the different stakeholders. So we involve developers for the technical risk, we involve the testers itself, the testing coordinators, but we also involve the project managers at the client, and we also involve the end client itself to determine the business risk. Based on their feedback, we make a matrix in which we map the different risks, and based on this matrix, we together as a team, so not just in Beijing, we decide which parts or which features we have to automate and which features might not pose such a big risk that it's that we have to spend the time on it to automate it.
Okay. Well, I guess most people in the audience agree that automated testing is, well, I'm curious to hear about the 12% that said no, but maybe we can do that. So we move on, or do you want to add some other things on automation since we're almost nearing the end of the hour?
Maybe one more thing. In our experience, you can use two different ways to automate things. You can use record and playback, which is very simple, and you can build an own framework. Building a framework requires a little bit of investment in time, but in the end it provides much better results. Especially with web testing, we see that the record and playback often breaks because it tends to use IDs of web elements that might be dynamic, that might be changing. Framework, we can use different XPaths, and we can really build other features around it, such as a reporting feature integrated with quality metrics, for example. That's our experience. You really need to have a clear idea of what you're going to do, and then invest some time in it upfront so that you can benefit from it in the long term.
Okay. Interesting. How about this one? Keeping the teams involved.
Yep. The thing is, you're working in 3 different locations, but you are actually direct colleagues of each other, and that's how people should see each other. That's also, for example, why it's so important to use the webcam, so you see each other every day. Another important thing is that what we do, we some people visit the other colleagues in another country once a year, not the whole team, because you want work to continue. It will also mean that it would get very expensive, but it's a good thing to be able to work next to each other for a week or maybe 2 weeks every year. And maybe even the most important thing is just make a joke sometimes. Don't be afraid that it might be a bad joke in a different culture. Just make a joke that would make sense at home, that people would find funny at home, and try to have a laugh together. Build a relationship with someone. Ask them how they are doing. Ask them how their weekend was. Ask the same question that you would ask a colleague who's sitting next to you in the office. Really see them as your direct colleagues, because that's what they are. You're part of one team. You have to work together. You have to make sure together that you finish the work that you're committed to. So you need each other.
Okay, and I think interesting to note is that everyone visits everyone, right? It's not just you visiting the Dutch team or the other way around.
No, it's everyone should visit everyone at some point. Like I said, not all at the same time. Maybe not even all in the same year, but everyone gets their turn.
Yeah, so get understanding. So more levels get understanding of each other's culture.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So how did the Chinese like Dutch cheese?
Actually, cheese is quite good, but herring is not really to their taste. I've never seen any Chinese person who can get used to that. But cheese is quite good, I think, for them.
Okay, I think we got another poll.
Yeah.
Sabrina?
That launch?
It's on. Getting interesting results here.
Yeah, it's kind of a mixed outcome.
Yeah, it's pretty much of a mixed.
Well, we're going towards the help side now.
Yeah, I think we're towards this slide. I think for a closeout for your ideas on remote agile.
Yeah.
Let's look at the poll. What they're saying. Most of them think actually it would help, and I guess that's what you're thinking as well, right?
Right. I think remote agile can actually be a great help to software development process. There's a lot of things that are different. There's a lot of things that might seem a little bit scary in the beginning because you're not used to them. You've never done them before, but you need to identify the problems, find a way to solve them, and then actually grab the opportunities that it offers you. It's much quicker. It makes the development process much quicker. It might even provide you with feedback on your products that you would normally never have if you were only using people from the same country, because a person in China looks at things differently. They've got a different point of view. They might have great ideas that you otherwise wouldn't have heard. I think the continuous development process, the fact that it gives you instant feedback as a developer, and the fact that it gives you control over the process as a project manager are big advantages of Agile. And the disadvantages or obstacles can be taken away if you deal with them as a team and you adjust your process to the reality that you are facing.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. And one of the audience members commented that often it's not a choice to work remotely. And I guess what we've learned today is, maybe you have to do it, maybe you have to do it agile, but you can turn it into your advantage.
Yeah.
By looking at cultural issues and kind of creating it one team, right?
Right. The one team thing is very, very important. And I think maybe it's 2014. People, even if they're working in the same office, sometimes they work at home. I think remote working is very normal now. You shouldn't see it as a bad thing. You should see it as an opportunity. Like I said, control the process, increase your business value, increase the speed, increase the velocity. Deal with things as they go.
Okay, that's all very interesting. Okay, we're almost near the end of the webinar. I think we have time for one or two quick questions. We got some other questions in. We're going to respond to those via email after the webinar. We got a question. Do you have a maximum member count for your teams, the Scrum teams?
Well, a Scrum team, so including the developers and testers, should be around 6 people, I think, because it's difficult to work together with a big group of people efficiently, and it also makes meetings very, very long. So if you have more tasks as you can handle in one team, just create a second team. Someone does not have to work on one Scrum team full time. You can also share a resource between 2 different teams.
Okay, so but do you have a fixed maximum, or is it case by case decided if you want to split off a team or keep the person on?
It's case by case, but I would say it's around 6 people, 6 to 7 people maybe.
Okay, thank you very much. We're almost hitting the hour, so I want to give it to Sabrina to close out. Sabrina, are you still there?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for attending our webinar. We will be sending you links to the recorded version on our YouTube channel and the slides on SlideShare. So you'll hear from us either today or tomorrow with those links.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, and hope to see you soon at one of our other webinars.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sabrina. Bye-bye.
Bye.